I kind of want to transition to our final topic here about wanting to have a Joe Rogan of the left. Uh, there are so many different thoughts about this one here, Chuck. But why don't you kind of intro this
Yeah.
one a little bit here? What is the conversation around wanting to have a Joe Rogan of the left right now?
Yeah. Well, this came up because if you just look at the non-traditional, we'll call it, media ecosystem, where lots of people are getting maybe their news or just their entertainment from, it is dominated by these figures that are either explicitly right wing or like right wing adjacent, or at least right wing curious, we'll say. People like Joe Rogan being the main one, and he's got like the most listened to podcast I think in the world.
Yeah,
Theo Vaughn, who's a comedian who genuinely is a really funny comedian, but he is also just dumb and hosts a lot of people on his show, and that really amplified these horrible views to a wide audience.
yeah.
Andrew Schultz, all these people, the Nelk Boys, Asmund Gold, which I'll get into in a minute of who he
Oh
is.
God.
Yeah, exactly. The Rat King himself. Yeah, so you have all of these voices that, and many of them not explicitly political. In fact, most of the ones that I mentioned, actually all of the ones that I mentioned, are not explicitly political shows, but they'll dive into politics.
Right.
And so that was a big, I mean, I think it was definitely a factor in elections for sure. It wasn't the only thing. There's not ever one only reason why an individual loses, but the media ecosystem is completely weighted in Republicans' favor and in right wing favor. And so Democrats are trying to figure out, I guess, how they're going to solve this, because the left doesn't really have much skin in the game. I mean, I think like there are a handful of voices out there that are like center left. I would say, to have a decent sized audience. Midas Touch is one of them. I think the biggest, creator out there is probably Hassan Piker, who is a
Yeah,
leftist Twitch streamer who is really good. I really like him a lot, but he's one dude, and
yeah.
he's far outflanked by all these right wing entities. So the Democrats are like, what can we do to court male voters and to create our own ecosystem? And that is a false premise to begin with. Now they're throwing like $20 million try to court the male vote and try to cultivate this quote unquote Joe Rogan of the left.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this and I'm rolling my eyes and beating my head against the wall and saying, here we go again with Democrats not understanding what the fuck is going on. These Most of these people were not created in some test tube. Now they are propped up certainly by right wing money. We know that. Benny
Yeah.
Johnson and Beanie Guy, what is his name, Tim Pool, who's received money from like the Russian government at some point. But
Yep.
most of these, they cultivate an organic following from their platform, whatever they do, and they don't explicitly talk politics. They talk about a bunch of other stuff. And so that's how they get these followings. They're not created in a lab. And the fact that trying to manufacture this is what the Democrats are thinking of doing is so just frustrating, because it's like you don't get what the problem is. That people can sniff out inauthenticity
Yes, they can.
a mile away. And so
Yeah.
trying to create something like this in a lab, so to speak, is never going to work. And the thing is like the right wing space is made up of such fucking losers. Like I mentioned Asmongold. A lot of people that are watching this probably don't know who Asmongold is, and
Yeah.
I didn't until like a year ago.
I just recently. Yeah.
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 He is the largest political streamer, period. I believe. I think that's correct. He's on
Yeah.
Twitch every single day, pretty much. He
Yeah.
is live streaming constantly to 60, 70, 80,000 people at a time, hundreds of thousands of people over the course of a day. His YouTube channels get millions and millions and millions of views, and he is
Right.
this disgusting human being. When I say disgusting, Google Asmongold Room. It will show you everything you need to know. He uses a dead rat as an alarm clock. And what I mean by that is that he has admitted this. He has a dead rat in his room, and he knows it's time to wake up when the sun comes in and starts cooking the rat's carcass and smelling, and he wakes up from the smell. I am not making that up. That is what he has said. This guy does not leave his house. He lives in utter filth, yet is a multimillionaire because of how popular of a streamer he is. He is the quintessential incel. Like whatever
Ooh.
you think of an incel being, that's him. He is the most popular political streamer on the right now. So if we can't figure out something to combat that, that is a utter moral failing and just pathetic. Just I don't know. I don't know the words to describe how pathetic this dude is. And like, look, Hassan Piker is great. And I really like him a lot, and I think he's a great communicator. But again, he can't do it himself. We need
No.
we need a lot of those people. And it just frustrates the hell out of me that Democrats are like not getting like most of the party leadership. I think people like David Hogg probably understand it, but most of the party leadership just don't get it. They're like, let's throw money at a problem and it'll fix itself. That ain't gonna work.
No, I mean, I think one of the big problems that preceded the current problems is that they waited too long to get into this in the first place. I mean,
Absolutely.
there was this overarching narrative about just like, oh, what we need to do is just, tax, like all like podcast equipment. Let's just like get rid of men being on podcasts. And
So
like,
dumb.
I understand like where a lot of that like frustration comes from, but at the same time, it's like, look, people just listen to podcasts. Like the problem isn't necessarily that people are on podcasts. The problem is that you have too much of a concentration of negativity, in the podcast sphere. The podcast sphere is being dominated by people who are saying a bunch of atrocious stuff. Like I don't think the goal here should be to eliminate podcasts. I think we just need to be highlighting and putting in more efforts and resources behind people who are actually speaking the truth, combating disinformation. I mean, it is just where people are putting their time and space right now. When people are out, commuting somewhere, they'll put on a podcast, or maybe they'll have like a YouTube, channel going in the background, like while they're driving somewhere every day. I mean, a lot of people still live in and around major cities, and they have to spend an hour or more in their car every day. It's just what people do. They take in information. You listen to sports podcasts. I listen to the Pat McAfee show sometimes. It's just,
That makes me great West Virginian. Love that guy. He's got some
it's
problems, but he's fine.
he's got a lot of problems, and I think he's a right winger. But like but it's a convenient thing. And so, as somebody who like we both do podcasts, independent thought, Appalachia. I mean, like this is something that like we do, and so I think that there does need to be more of an investment into it. I mean, there are some other people out there. I mean, there's like the Keith Edwardses of the world and the David Packmans and Brian Tyler Cohens. I mean, like they have been kind of making a name for themselves more on YouTube, but there is a lot of billionaire money that goes into the right wing propaganda
Oh yeah.
machine. And one of the names you didn't mention earlier was like the Daily Wire and how they
Yeah.
have cultivated so much for themselves. Ben Shapiro, the white supremacist Matt Walsh. I forget the other guy's name who I can't really take too seriously right now.
I mean,
Um,
there's so many of them. I mean,
yeah, but Candace Owens was there for a while. She's not there anymore, but she does her own thing. Jordan Peterson, Tucker Carlson, still floating out there in the ether. So Charlie Kirk, who is just a constant troll, in our lives. I mean, there are so many of them, and they take in just tens of millions of dollars, like for these people. I mean, I think Steven Crowder was approached by the Daily Wire, and they
yeah.
offered him like a $50 million contract. I mean, there's
Something absurd. Yeah.
so much money going into the right wing propaganda sphere, and so we kind of like constantly asking ourselves how important this all is. When you are seeing rampant disinformation going across, our country right now, and you're wondering how do people think this way? Why do people think this way? I think too many people on the left are disconnected from just how much of a prevailing reach these people have. I
Yeah.
mean, it is hard for me to stomach, but the few times that I've watched some clips from the Daily Wire or for Tim Pool's show, they are willing to and routinely do spit out more disinformation in a matter of 5 minutes than you would think it's even possible. It actually, in some cases, will put even Fox News to shame.
Yeah.
Fox News seems tame compared to a lot of these people. So I think that the real answer here, Chuck, needs to be that if the Democrats actually want to truly win back people, if they truly want to combat this, they need to throw resources at people who are already doing this and help them build up a following even more versus trying to create some astroturf thing that's never going to really succeed because it's obvious when people are trying to just manufacture something that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and I think that you're 100% right. I think there's also another element to it that there's not an easy answer for, but there's such a cultural problem that they're having, which is like the Democrats are just not perceived as being cool at all. Now, I'm not saying the
Yeah,
Republicans are either. Like, there's some weird sphere of people that think Donald Trump is, but more importantly, Democrats are viewed as super lame and woke, scoldy, all this stuff. And I'm not saying like woke was the reason they lost the election. That's stupid. But my point is that there we have like creators like Brian Tyler Cohen and everything that are focused on news and politics, but most people don't like to consume that on a daily basis. And
yeah,
the way that Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all them are successful is that they'll allow that stuff to trickle in, like with their
yeah,
guests and stuff like that. And but it won't be the entire focus of their show. And
right,
that's something that's missing. Like, look at Barstool Sports, for example. That
yeah,
nothing on paper makes it a right wing ecosystem, but it is
yeah,
because sports and like their bro culture and stuff. And I'm not saying that we need to recreate that, but I'm saying that like that's what the left is up against. And it's a really hard situation because you can take democratic money and put into things, but I guarantee you that sometimes like with some of these non-political shows and stuff, you're really going to need to build it out in so many different ways. And I think that they need to start supporting like mid-tier creators and helping them gain bigger followings and helping them reach more people organically, not pushing messages. But because there's so many left creators out there that are like kind of hanging out in the ether, right?
yeah,
They're doing well for themselves. Like they've cultivated somewhat of an independent following, but not enough to really reach like a Theo Vaughn level audience or a Joe Rogan level audience or anything even remotely compete with that. And I think that's where a lot of the resources should also be pushed into because there's some like I think the biggest like non-political left-leaning, left-wing creators that I can think of would be like Last Podcast on the Left and the Last Podcast Network, and they purposely don't talk about politics really all that much at all because they
yeah,
they have a wide broad audience. But you can listen to them and you can tell where their alignment is,
right,
and it's interesting because I think what really needs to happen is the Democrats need people to actually understand the information ecosystem and
right,
not just be like, well, we need to put more money into Brian Tyler Cohen. And I'm not trying to shit on Brian Tyler Cohen. I think he's fine, but it's just
yeah,
like you need more of like Pat McAfee's, for example. And again, not excusing Pat McAfee. I'm just saying like I'm
yeah,
biased towards him because he was a good kicker for West Virginia University. That's my only thing I like about him. But
yeah,
we need more of the pardon my takes of the world, the Barstool Sports of the world, where it's like they're able to reach people in mediums where these people aren't actively seeking out politics. And I think that
right.
that's a really, really important thing. And I don't, the problem is I don't have the answer. I don't know how you do that. But the focus with the Democrats right now is clearly like way off.
Yeah. No, there's no clear vision right now. I mean, I think there's no clear game plan other than to let's just sit back and do nothing while Trump wreaks havoc across the country. I mean, that seems to be the
Yeah.
game plan right now. So I I am immensely frustrated with the direction of the Democratic Party. I think that they are constantly being led by people who one of two things has to be true. Either they are the most incompetent people on earth and they keep failing up, or they are purposely this ineffective for you insert your own reasoning for why you think that is.
I think that they're incompetent and that they're too afraid to take any large moral positions and have like a firm stance on anything on that's even remotely left wing, because they're a
Yeah.
center right party in many respects, and I agree with you. I think that there needs to be people in the party that actually understand that. And I mean, I don't know if there ever will be, but independent creators who aren't linked to the party system might be the way to go. Because I mean, look, you have people that have tremendous platforms that have a lot of influence that could influence people in the right way, but
Yeah.
you know there's no organized ecosystem out there, and there's no organized money. I saw a post from Taylor Lorenz the other day, who like she's interesting. She's a great journalist, and I really like her. But she was saying how like people on the right, billionaires on the right, are paying people to be counter protesters, right? Like there's a whole
Yeah,
funneled money ecosystem for them to do that, and
yeah,
these protests to be counter protesters. Nothing like that exists on the left.
no.
Nothing.
No, I mean, and I think there's a larger conversation around like why that might be,
Yeah,
because there. I mean, I think to a degree you kind of have to question where some of the money comes from and where it goes in the Democratic
sure.
Party. But I think the overall takeaway that I just want to present to this conversation is the fact that it comes back to Democratic leadership. Like we are watching a mismanagement of funds, a mismanagement of direction, a mismanagement of tactics. I mean, like we just cannot seem to find people who are heading this party who seem to be truly representing what we are asking from them. And until that changes, I think that we have to keep kind of shining a spotlight on it because I think for me, it's just as important to point that out because if we really want to defeat the Republican Party, if you really want to defeat Trump and the reason why he has power in the first place, you're not going to accomplish that unless you have a force that's truly willing to combat what they stand for and what they are trying to do. And so I think it's just as important to scrutinize our quote unquote team as is the other team.
I 100% agree, and I think that people who scold other people for criticizing Democrats need to just like wake up and realize that if you are against any criticism of your quote unquote team or party, that means that you are in a cult, and you
Yeah,
need to just really come to terms with that.
yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. Chuck, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really do appreciate it. For those who want to subscribe to to his pod or to his Substack, go ahead and click the top of the screen right now. You can click on where our names are scrolling. You can subscribe to his newsletter. For those who want to check out some other places that you're at online, Chuck, where can they find you at?
Yeah, it's just Appodlachia on every platform. Appodlachia on every single platform: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever that's called anymore, YouTube, all of that good stuff. And if you're a fan of Demon Copperhead, the book, I've got a great interview out with Barbara Kingsolver that just came out yesterday. So check that out.
Yeah, for those who are watching the playback, some of those links will be in the episode description right now. So go ahead and click there, and you'll be able to see those underneath. Chuck, really do appreciate it. Hope to have you back on, hopefully like next month or something like that.
Yeah, let's do it, man. This is great. I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody for watching, and thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I think we should do this more often.
Definitely, really do appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who's been watching. I'll be back again tomorrow with Natalie Bensavenga at about 5 o'clock Eastern time, or 5:30 Eastern time actually. So make sure that you are tuned in for that, and we will have some more guests next week as well. So make sure that you are having your push notifications turned on so that you know when we go live. Thank you, everyone. We will see you in the next one.
See ya.